Thank you, Anish, and a very good afternoon to the few tables that are fully occupied and the many tables that are empty, and I'm sure we'll get more people to come in as we go along. While, Anish introduced this as a boring subject, the reality is that whether we can come for a conference such as this, whether we can actually hold a conference such as this, is all dependent on pricing. So let's not think about pricing from merely the fact that it is the tag price on a product. Pricing, when you really think about it, is the oil which drives the engine which powers the organization. And it takes a lot of effort to figure out what is the right price that you can afford to sell a product at. To a large extent, pricing is not an isolated decision. When you really think about pricing, it's a combination of, one, the intrinsic products, the intrinsic elements, which are things like the material cost, the manufacturing cost, the cost of distribution, the cost of holding inventory. So there are those aspects which are there. Then there are aspects around brand. And when you think about it from a brand perspective, it then tells you, can you command a certain price? Can you create a premium pricing over your competitors? Are you able to create differentiation in the minds of the consumer, which will help you to be able to charge a slightly higher price? So there are those aspects which are there. The third aspect is in terms of design. And when you look at it from a design perspective, it's all about, is this a design which people love? Is this a design that they are willing to pay a higher price for? Is this a design which your competitor does not have? Then the other aspect of all of this is that you might have all of this, but if it's a closely guarded secret unknown to the consumer, so you have to think about access. Are you available offline? Are you available online? How frequently do you come up in the face of the consumer? How do you make sure that from merely looking at your branding on a screen or in a store, that you actually convert them to walk in or to be able to click through? So there are those aspects which are there. So don't think of pricing as merely what you charge on the tag. Think of pricing, first of all, as being a holistic combination of several things, and is not a decision to be taken by a costing person in the organization or a product person in the organization or even a CEO in the organization. It requires collaborative thinking to figure out what is pricing. And here what we have with us is a group of people who've battled with all these aspects, who've talked about what needs to be done, how do you actually create the right price point, how do you ensure that you're able to sell it at full price, when do you actually lapse into giving a discount to the customer, what are the conditions which will drive you into actually discounting your product, how do you plan your pricing across different channels where you might have a slightly different category and pricing on the offline or on the online channel, or for certain periods of time. So these are other important things which are there. Let me first start with Rajesh. I must confess that I wasn't actually the nominated panel coordinator. Mr. Rajesh Jain was the panel coordinator, and unfortunately, he was not keeping too well, so because of which he nominated me to be the panel coordinator, and he said that I will be a part of the panel. So let me, with due deference, ask Rajesh the first question. With a brand like Lacoste, you've always had the opportunity to look at Polo Peak and figure out how to be able to charge twice what the market charges for exactly the same product. How do you actually, take that decision to be able to charge that kind of a price?
Thank you. Thank you, Bijou. Good afternoon.
And Rajesh also comes from an accounting background, so he knows exactly how to calculate prices.
That helps. So, Bijou, to answer your question, there are, I think, certain things which sort of automatically come with an international brand. So, if we look at the Indian customers today, customers have definitely evolved over a period of time. And today's customer is quite aware of what is happening globally, A, through their own travel, B, through media, and C, through internet. So they know that Lacoste as a brand, how it is positioned across the world and what kind of pricing is there in other parts of the world. In India, we are not, in fact, most premium international brands are not at similar pricing as global pricing, especially for apparel. And we are also not similar to the global pricing so far. However, we are trying to reach that level because we want to maintain that brand's DNA, brand's positioning, which is even today, the brand positioning is definitely not diluted. Across the world also we are bridge to luxury or premium fashion. So is the case with India. We are bridge to luxury and premium fashion. And that really helps that being an international brand, it gives you a little edge. However, that little edge does not mean that that's the only factor. You need to understand the quality of product that you are able to give to the customers. That has to be exactly the same that you offer across the world and based upon your positioning. Second part is convenience. Convenience. So first part I call them as collection. Your collection has to be beautiful, it has to be innovative, it has to have great quality for the ingredients that go into it. Second part is what I call as convenience. Convenience would mean the customer. How do you give that customer service that the customer would like to come back to you again and again without bothering too much about the pricing, etc. Of course, pricing is important, but then Indian customer, in my view, is not necessarily looking only for pricing. They look for value for money. There is a clear difference between the high price, low price, or value for money. So Indian customers do look for value for money, and that value for money is also seen in today's world in terms of the services that we offer, the convenience that we offer. Whether you're available online, whether you're available offline, whether you are physically present in those places where your TG is there, and when the customer comes into your offline store or goes to your online, they should get a beautiful experience. That's extremely important. Third aspect, which is catching up very fast in India also. Globally, it has already caught on. In India also, it's catching on very fast, is care. Care for the environment. Care for Mother Earth. ESG is catching on very fast in India also. And when we see that when we use the recycled fabric, when we use organic cotton, Indian customers are willing to pay a little extra for those kind of products because they know that these are the products which actually carry a lot of cost also into it. So these three aspects put together do help us bring that pricing that we are able to charge in the Indian market as well.
Good. Umar, this is a question to you because you are in largely the wedding space, the festive occasion space with ethnic wear. And when you really look at it, and I've come to your store a couple of times and I've seen, women come in and they wear it, and it's not a singular purchase, it's normally a group who comes in and they will all wear different kinds of lehengas and stuff like that. And sometimes it's also the bride who's also there. And then there's, jewelry which is brought out and they are matching the jewelry with the dress and they're looking at the kind of texture which is there on the fabric, and they're thinking of the theme colors and what are the kind of colors which are there. Rarely have I seen people think of asking price first. They look for product first, and they have a general budget saying I want something between 25,000 to 50,000 rupees, some general budget like that. It's not as specific as 999 less 20%. So how do you manage to elevate your product to that kind of a level? Or do you think that your category by itself is, a category which is amenable to this kind of pricing?
Hi, thank you for the question. And so I represent a brand, Koskii. Ethnic occasion, women's category is what we do. I think our category is very unique and interesting. When Rajesh talks about, Lacoste, and then you talk about a ghagra, two opposite ends of the spectrum, right? In our category, I think, first of all, when it comes to pricing and when it comes to a budget that a customer comes in, if it's a bride, the budget is always set at a certain point, and the buying always happens as what she likes. And that likes can be very different from what the budget is. The variance can be anywhere between 50 to 100%. Like if somebody is coming in and saying, oh, my budget is 25,000, it's not surprising for us to see that she bought something for 50,000. Because that's that one day where you're getting married and you want to look your best and you fall in love with the product and you buy it. But I think as Koskii, what we have tried to do and worked very hard at is that one, I don't know how many of you have seen the Koskii store. Can I have a raise of hands? How many of you have seen the Koskii store? Right, quite a few. That's good. My marketing is working. We are very aspirational when you look at a store. In fact, initially when we launched the stores, we got feedback from a few people that it is very intimidating for us to walk in because we feel like the products are going to be very expensive, right? So that aspiration we created, and there was a time where I almost called my branding guy and said, boss, isko thoda tone down karo, bahut zyada wo acha lag raha hai. And then we said, and he told me, look, it's a matter of time when your customer realizes that you're affordable. So one was we had to create an aspiration. And second, we wanted to make the product very affordable. And how did we go about that, right? For every product, while when we look at it from a business perspective, you say you want to sell at 100 and you have your expenses of your rentals, X, Y, Z, and you stack it down. And finally you say, mere ko bhi thoda paisa to banana hai. So this should be my price. We generally didn't look at it that way. We looked at it from a perspective of, is the perceived value of the product matching what the customer wants to pay? If I'm looking at this ghagra and saying, boss, ye to 50,000 ka lag raha hai, and we have a huge army of salespeople who are interacting with customers day in and day out, right? We get a lot of feedback from them, boss, ye ghagre ka price bolo. And they'll say, yes, sir, ye 55,000 mein bik jayega. Mere back of the mind may it'll be like 45,000 is a good price for that, right? But he's saying 55, so 45 is set. So what happens is we do a lot of making sure that the perceived value of the product matches the customer expectation. And we are very clear about who our customer is. Our customer is not the premium customer who will buy a Sabyasachi or a Tarun Talani. Our customer is a regular customer who has a good job. He's reasonably well off. She's a software person, or she's working somewhere, or that is a customer. So what is that customer going to pay? And sometimes it's a case where, the price that we have on the product may not actually stack up with the unit economics, but that doesn't matter. What matters is, does it match the expectation of the customer? And that is what we have gone about in terms of figuring out the price. Luckily for us, that works out well from a unit economics perspective. It pays off all the other costs. And we do make a little bit of money at the bottom, and that works. So to answer your question at a top level, that's how we approached pricing. And from a variance perspective, when a customer walks in, the budgets vary. And one of the reasons why we got into women's category is that they come to buy one, they don't generally buy one. And that works for us, right? And that's basically
great.
What it is.
So multiple purchases, and you establish a price basis the customer's perception of price, which is not a cost-driven way of actually defining price. One of the things we always talk about in the luxury business is the fact that you have brands such as Louis Vuitton, Hermes, etc., which are able to actually define prices for their products, which defy any logic. Because if you look at it from material cost perspective, you can't justify even a tenth of that price. If you look at it from a retail cost perspective, you can't justify the price. Yet, those brands actually manage price perception in a way where they get the customer to buy at that price, one. They make sure that they don't discount, two. And the third is at the end of the day, when the customer buys, they feel that they've got a good deal, which is leaving them with a good thought. So, if any of you all would like to hazard a guess on how, pricing has been a strategic lever to differentiate in the case of luxury brands. It might be useful for people to understand that as opposed to being compared. Rajesh, since you're the international brand person here
Sure.
on the panel.
So, Bijou, I would say that it's not only the cost of raw material. When you talked about the cost of material, it should be the 1/10 of this thing, but that's not the only case. There are three major important elements in any retail. There are several other factors also, but three major. One of them is cost of material, which is a large part of the total production. Second is the occupancy cost. Across the world, wherever you go, you have to give so much of rent and CAM that you need to take care of that by your pricing itself. And the third part is the personnel cost, the salaries of the people that we are employing here. So this is one aspect of how the pricing is to be done. The second aspect, when you talk about the luxury pricing, see, luxury, when we talk about, irrespective of whatever we say, they give you a certain quality. Now, if there is another brand who can give similar quality, then perhaps at a lower price, then perhaps luxury would find it difficult to command that kind of pricing from this quality perspective alone. Second part is the value in terms of, for want of a better word, I would like to just say that across the world, people also want to flaunt.
Status value.
It's the status symbol. So that you're carrying a Louis Vuitton bag, or you're wearing
Lacoste t-shirt or something.
Lacoste is not luxury, it's accessible luxury or premium. But yes, it does give an edge to all the luxury brands, including the accessible luxury. And of course, they have to earn profits also. We know that Louis Vuitton's owner has become the richest person in the world. So that also is an important part. But from customers' perspective, I think it's very important that when they how the product is perceived, how the brand is perceived, and then the customer is willing to pay for that.
Sure. Sanjay, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, so just a bit of addition to this. I feel when you talk about the super luxury brands, I think there are two types of consumers largely that kind of venture into these brands. One who are obviously right there and who can afford them. They barely would be looking at the price tags. And somehow they find the connect with the brands and with themselves and the personality, and so they go in and they kind of subscribe to the brand. Then there are those other set of people who are not looking at the price point from a value for money perspective. They are actually trying their best to reach to a point where they can afford that brand. And so I think these are the social climbers which somehow I feel that are also in today's times a lot more wanting to get into. And as he said, the flaunt value is very huge, and so somewhere they kind of use these brands to kind of announce their stature and that they have arrived in society. So I think these are the largely two sets of people that, and so whatever good or great they're doing to their brands is what kind of gets them the money. So a lot of intangibles are built in, which really can't be quantified, nor can they be explained rationally.
Great. In fact, on that last point that you raised, one of the theories is that the reason why China has done better in luxury is because of the fact that coming from a communist background, everybody is the same. Unlike India, where you had the rich and the middle class and the poor and things like that. So when they make it big, the way they are able to differentiate themselves is using all these flaunt symbols. And that's one of the reasons why China contributes to some 30% of the world's luxury business. 46%. 46 now? Wow. And whereas on the other hand, India is a miserable 3-4% of it. Sandeep, now this is a question to you. A lot of people talk about pricing as in the eyes of the beholder. Umar talked about what do I think the consumer will pay. Then there is a way to look at it from, what does it cost me to produce and get it to the point of sale? So that's another form of looking at pricing. Given that you're doing a lot of work in terms of technology, churning terabytes of data to be able to understand and create insights, etc. What has your experience been in terms of the ways at which the fashion retailers can look at pricing?
Sure. Thanks, Bijou. Just do a very quick one-line introduction. I'm Sandeep from
Absolutely.
SOLUS.ai, and we create what's typically called a system of intelligence. So essentially machine learning systems, largely to figure out how to nudge customers at the n equal to 1 level. Now, pricing has a big role to play out here because we do a lot of work in retail.
You wanna just, yeah.
We do a lot of work in retail, and I think even in this conversation, the product always seems to be the garment. We look at the product as every interaction you have with the customer. Now, brands send what, 2 SMSs a week to customers, a WhatsApp message or 2 every month. If you're D2C, then you're sending 2, 3 a day. So each brand sends about a few hundred interactions with the customer every year, but the number of purchases are maybe 2 a year. The average customer is buying about twice a year. The good customer is buying 4, 5, 6 times, from a brand. So the interactions can't just be those 2 purchases. It's those 100 times you've sent something to the customer as well. And in that, the pricing usually, or the message usually is 20% off, 30% off, 40% off. And that's where I feel that people very often get it slightly wrong. So we've done some tests with retailers in the country. When you don't lead in those hundreds of interactions with percentage off, but you lead with, I know what's the right product for you, it works better than 30% off. When you lead with, I know what is your taste, what's your right fit, what's the right fabric for you. So consumers actually respond really well to the brand having made that effort, that I've figured out the right, relevant thing for you. So be product-led, be relevance-led. It beats being offer-led. So when now brands say that we need to cut discounting, the switch really is be relevance-led, be product-led. And it seems to work better from a conversion standpoint, from an incrementality standpoint. So that's, and tests are genuinely showing this. Offer versus non-offer, you can have better conversion when you have no offer in the messaging if you do other things right, get the timing right, get the tonality right, get the product right. And I think that's a big value unlock for everybody. So it's, you can just improve your pricing by cutting out the discounting. And there are very simple ways of doing that by just engaging right with the customer.
Great. Joseph, I think a word of a line of introduction about your brand, but you're in the same space as what Umar is, which is in the ethnic wear, largely based in the South. The question again, like I was asking Umar, is there a challenge that you face in terms of discounting? Because in the larger category of apparel, there is so much noise about discounting. There is brand noise about discounting. There is retail noise about discounting. There are seasons traditionally for discounting, though nowadays the seasons get extended a lot longer. So in the context of all of that, when somebody walks into your store, do they actually expect discounting because you fall within the same category? Or would it be like walking into a grocery store where you know that pretty much you pay MRP and buy? So how do you see the challenge when you are in this space, which is the ethnic wear space?
Thank you. So I'm Joseph Paul George. So we have an ethnic wear retailer. We have about 35 stores in South India. So
how many stores?
35 stores.
35.
So one thing I'd like to, before I get on the discounting, is the perceived value part. So that plays a big role in ethnic wear retail. Because when we make a kurti, sometimes the perceived value of the kurti and the actual cost will be very different both ways. Sometimes you have an expensive product, but the customer looks at it and says, I don't think it's worth this much. Sometimes you have a relatively cheaper product, but the customer looks at it and says, I'm willing to pay a lot more for this. So our product pricing is also very similar to that, where each and every product, we actually have to analyze the perceived value of the product and then decide the price. We can't do a cost-driven structure all the time because that brings a lot of difference. That affects the discounting, right? At the end of the day, the discounting, that's where it comes in. So in terms of do we face an issue, we used to, definitely. So you walk into a mall, you walk anywhere, there's, like you said, it's just discounts all the time, right? So then we feel one critical aspect is, as a brand, how do you take a stand? Or how do you show your brand as? So one thing we decided is we won't offer any direct discounts to the customers. So if a customer, but at the end of the day, the customer does want offers. They do want something when they come in. So we made the structure such that you come into our store, you buy one product at a full price, only then the offer gets activated, where you have a 10% stock, where you can buy at a different price. So it'll be maybe buy for 1699 and you'll get a kurti for 499 from that 10%. But you can, if you directly go to the 10% stock, there's no offer. So you cannot come to our store and just buy an offer stock and leave.
You can't be a discount buyer.
You can't be a discount buyer. So the main reason we took that stand is also because we looked at a lot of other brands. We also, when we started out, went ahead with what other brands were doing, EOSs and so on. But it doesn't make sense after a point because the customer also knows, right? There are many brands where the customer knows the discount is coming. So let me just wait it out. They'll come to the store, look at the price, go through everything and be like, I'll buy it in the next 2 months when the discount starts. And once you build your brand and you build that perception that way, then it's very hard to change it about. So we took a stand since the last few years that this is the only offer we'll run. There's no flat 50 off, flat 40 off, nothing. No EOSS concept. We'll run variations of this offer, but at all points, the fundamental aspect is that any offer in our store can only be activated if you buy a full price product. So that has been working for us.
Sure. Sanjay, this question is to you. Sorry, Rajesh. Go ahead. We can allow Sanjay.
I would just like to add a little to what co-panelists said that about the discounting and end of season sale. I think in fashion industry, it is also necessary, compulsory to have that end of season sale because of the two reasons. One is that in fashion industry, you have to bring freshness every season. Otherwise, the customer will not come back to you. And in order to bring that freshness, you have to move out the old inventory. And for that, end of season is a great tool that we have because of which we can flush out the old inventory and bring the new inventory. Second, for a brand like us, who is perceived as an expensive brand, we have two sets of customers. One set of customer, it's like the old times when people would like to see first day, first show of a new movie. That customer is the customer that has arrived. They know that I want a new product, fresh product, and as early as possible. They would normally buy on the full price. There is another set of customer who's an aspirational customer. They don't want to invest so much of money initially on a brand. So they buy during end of season sale. And we have experienced that many of those customers, they convert to full price customer once they experience the brand, the kind of product that we have. So from these two perspectives, I think end of season sale is quite important also. It's not that end of season sale is always bad. It is a necessity.
Okay. Sorry, Umar is going to add.
I had an interesting point that I want to add. So at Koskii, it's very interesting because for all you people who don't know, we also do end of season sales. We do it because pura market sale pe hai. We don't do it because we have inventory left out that we need to discount because hamare paas inventory left out hota hi nahi hai. So we have built a model that is just-in-time inventory and we churn 6 times in a year. That means every 2 months, if you come to Koskii, you'll see something new. So if you're waiting to say कि ये मैं end of season sale में लूँगी, तो वहाँ पे वो रहेगा नहीं because वो बिखा रहेगा. But what is the good news is that what we sell in end of season sale is also new merchandise on discount because puri market discount pe hai. So it's a very interesting thought process that, you are forced to do end of season sale because if the whole market is on sale, then the customer is going to the other stores and you don't get sale. So you have to market sale. It doesn't mean that we have to sell old products. So we end up selling new products. And that is why we have a following of people who are buying new products on a discount and calling it out, right? So this is like good. So it works very well for us. But I also have seen, like I was just speaking to him also, a lot of new age brands have started moving away from seasons and have started moving into just-in-time models and introducing continuous freshness in the business. And I have a whole bunch of founder friends who talk to me about that. And I think that is where I believe the industry is slowly leading to. And that is also optimizing the entire supply chain in terms of not buying a lot of bulk upfront and having inventory that you need to liquidate and have a big hit on your bottom line. Sure. So some interesting shifts, I guess, in the industry.
In fact, Sanjay, all of that was actually my question to you, which was, is pricing a lever to drive sale or pricing a tool to clear inventory?
So I think for brands like us, the pricing, actually there's a triangulation of sorts. There are three levers which kind of help us decide the price. One is pure cost and at what multiple the business can make money. The second is the perceived value of the product, as everybody has stated over here. And the third is basically at what price you feel that the customer is kind of going to let go of the product or going to be very excited about the product. So I think the similar belief also exists at Spykar. And I feel that pricing, as you rightly said in your preamble, that it's not about the final sticker that you put on a garment. It's at the end of the day, what is the value that you bring to the consumer in as a whole, and how does the customer react to something like that? End of season sales and our lives have become so entwined that as much as we'd like that, we move away from it, but somehow this industry as a whole has a lot of work to do on this. And I hope that at some point of time we'll kind of get to that point.
Yeah,
Can I add?
sure.
So, Bijou, I would just like to add to what Sanjay said to answer your question that whether pricing is a lever to flush out the old inventory or it is to drive the sales. In fact, it is both. So initially it started with the thought process that we have to flush out the old inventory, but at the same time we're also running a business. We have realized that during that period, during that end of season sale period, the sales shoot up. And obviously when you are making the plans for the next year, it becomes a part of your sales target as well. So from that perspective, it is both. It started with flushing out the old inventory, but now it gets logged into your business plans to drive the sale also.
No, so, if I were to look at Sandeep's world, then the way to think about it is I sell 100 at 100, then I sell maybe 30 at 70, then I sell another 20 at 50, and then figure out what my weighted average margins are. And so, on the other hand, a lot of this is also because of the fact that we've got inventory to sell. And when you think about it from an inventory perspective, it is, did I judge the saleability of the design right? Did I actually place the right quantity in terms of orders? Even if I did place the right quantity in terms of orders, did I get it all at the right time? Or did it actually come delayed, because of which it came slightly out of season rather than being flush in season? So, to my mind, I think a lot of our pricing decisions, clearing inventory, goes back to also our supply chain processes and practices. That's one part of it. The second part of it is that, we never discount core, but we are very happy discounting fashion. And to us, fashion is like one stepchild. It comes, it's, I don't want to use another analogy, but it comes, it gives you excitement for some period of time. Everybody has a lot of interest, but the moment you think about the next season's fashion, this season's fashion is a bad word, which has to be flushed out of the system. So, this whole balance between what is core, what is fashion, how do you want to handle these two together? And, the supply chains obviously will have to also be very different for the two. And we have to contend with some things to be able to finally go back to a life where hopefully we will be far less in terms of discounting to the customer.
Completely agreed. Just to add a couple of points here. See, he deals in a category which is, let's say, mostly saris or those places. Correct. Where the size set doesn't matter. In our case, the size set matters. When we have those odd sizes piled up with us, we have to flush it out. And a lot of people who are aspirational and they are okay taking those sizes which are not the popular sizes, they come and buy during end of season sale. And secondly, there are certain styles, as you talked about the fashion part, there are certain styles in fashion which perhaps either would have come late or they might not work out at all. You have to flush out that inventory as well. So apart from supply chain, there are certain elements which necessitate that we have to have end of season sale as well.
Correct. So Anish, I know you're standing up to make sure that we all get off. Oh, okay, perfectly all right. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of this panel, making this interesting and relevant and practical to this audience. So thank you once again a lot for all of
Bijou, I just want to say, I think this is the first panel at IFF that has not used the words Gen Z or Gen AI.